Hello, my name is Shane Brody. I've been traveling around the country talking to trans, intersex, non-binary, agendered, etc. people who are kind of under a big trans umbrella. Some people don't consider themselves part of that, but all the people that I've been interviewing generally do. Also, I've been interviewing some parents and allies and people who feel like they're adjacent to the community in some way. Okay, so we're in a city here on the high plains next to the Rocky Mountains, and my guests here are going to go ahead and introduce themselves in whatever way they want to.
Hi, so I'm Natalie Jade. I use she/they pronouns, and there's so much else I could say about myself.
Okay, well, hopefully we'll get into that.
My name's Jesse. My pronouns are they, them.
Okay. And how are you two connected?
We've been, we're engaged. We've been together for a few years now.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I'd say. We've have an interesting story.
Okay.
I'd say.
Go into it.
Okay, so we first dated 9 years ago?
2015.
Yeah.
Could you come up a little closer?
2015, we dated for about a year. And then we weren't dating. And then we started dating again 3 years ago, about.
Okay. Do you have like this long-standing relationship, like a friendship that you go in and out of being partners?
Sort of.
Sort of? There's some shaking of the head there.
No, we aren't monogamous, and the first time around, Jade was about to get married to someone who didn't get along with me, and we were, after that relationship failed.
Okay.
We sort of reconnected, but
so are you non-monogamous or are you polyamorous? Some people distinguish between those.
I like saying ethically non-monogamous. Okay. I understand that it's pretty interchangeable for me.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd say the same. Like the ethical part's important. But also,
what does that mean to be ethically non-monogamous?
Mostly means open communication. Everybody on the same page, understanding boundaries, and basically, I don't know, not lying.
Okay. Does everybody who's in a relationship like that have to be non-monogamous themselves?
It generally happens that way, but it doesn't have to. Okay. And just like a monogamous relationship, you have boundaries that might differ from another monogamous relationship. Mm. It's really, the ethical part is within staying within those boundaries. People that are non-monogamous, their boundaries include having other partners. But as long as you're open and honest about it and everyone's on the same page and nobody's breaking any of the boundaries that you've set in your relationship, then that's where the ethics come in.
Okay. Yeah. So you could have like somebody who is monogamous, but their partner is non-monogamous, and that could be an honest and communicative relationship.
Yeah, there's they call that a monopoly.
Oh.
Monopoly.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right.
Monopoly.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, that's why I think it's funny too.
There's also solo poly. I've seen that online. What does that mean? I have no idea.
So solo polyamorous people tend to, so they prefer, some of them prefer to live alone, but the main thing is that they very much operate off of themselves, right? And they can have multiple relationships, but it's very much so like, I'm not looking for somebody to move in with me or to create life with in that way. Okay. I have multiple relationships, but I live independently.
Oh, another term I've heard is relationship anarchy.
I was about to say relationship anarchy.
Okay, all right.
Because that's really, the more I learn about everything, the more I think I'm more like relationship anarchy than polyamory, although there is overlap.
Right, and you guys are engaged.
Yes.
Sorry, I tend to use the word guys. I know it's not.
No, it's okay.
I'm good with guys.
Okay, some people consider it sexist language, though, and it's not. Some people who are trans femme, for instance, don't like that term.
Right. It can
Unfortunately,
seem
it's like ingrained in their brain or something.
I'm the same way with dudes.
Yeah, right.
And I usually catch myself right away,
Yeah.
and I go, "Dude, sorry, no." Like,
yeah, right. That's funny. Okay, so you're engaged. Does that mean that you're going to get the marriage license and all that?
That's what we're kind of talking about right now. With the current climate in this country, I don't have an awful lot of trust in our government, and I don't know that I really need them to validate my relationship. The things that are important to us are if either of us gets sick or if Ace gets sick, being able to...
and Ace is who?
Ace is our child.
Okay.
11-year-old she, they.
Okay.
But being able to, visit each other in the hospital, have the same sort of rights without the sort of license, there's kind of ways that you can sort of piecemeal that.
right.
So we were talking between doing
like
those
power
two
of attorney.
things.
And,
having power of attorney, having an adoption sort of thing set up.
Civil union.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to set something up, like, as far as like legal documents that way. But like, then the other reason for that too is like Medicaid, right? And so like, I work at a call center and I have insurance, right? But they make a little less, and then Ace is a minor, and so they've been on.
We have really good insurance through the state, and where we are now, like being a single parent. I'm widowed, so I'm Ace's only like legal guardian.
Okay.
And so
that could be tricky too.
Yeah.
With people who are trans.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I've lost my train of thought though. Sorry.
Insurance. Medical care and
it's taken care of us so much since we've moved out to the state, and we would lose that if we got married. So
yeah, we're trying to...
You'd lose Medicaid. Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
Because then it would start going by like our joint
finances.
salary. And
wow. That's terrible.
We actually did not have state funding for almost all of Ace's life, even though I was the only living guardian, and I never made enough money.
Right.
I was always underemployed, but the state, because we had gone through like a known donor, when we had a sperm donor, they wouldn't give us state funding until we had a trial where our donor lost custody.
Oh, wow.
Even though we had to create an entire contract that was based around, we will never ask for money and they will never ask for custody.
Wow.
And then I didn't find out until the pandemic, when I wasn't working and they still were denying us for food stamps and stuff, that they said, oh, we haven't been doing this for the last almost decade because we need to get your donor, who in the contract wanted anonymity. And like, that was their main thing, was they never wanted to have their name there, which you can't do in a custody trial. So we actually...
So the state was forcing you into a custody trial.
Right. That you
didn't want to do.
Right. We had a 12-page contract that said, this is exactly why we don't want to do this. Right. And they said that doesn't count. Even though we had a lawyer draw it up, we had it notarized. It was 2012, and they didn't have anything.
And that was to get benefits for...
Well, this was just for before we had our child.
Yeah.
That was just to make sure that we were all protected. But then, when it was just me and Ace, and I was trying to get SNAP, that was why I was being denied. We actually had the Detroit ACLU fight it and create a precedent in the state that we were in at the time.
Wow.
That when you apply, that can no longer be a thing, where they flag the application, and if there is another party on there for custody, they won't let it go forward. So they had to change the way that their applications are done online and through the phone, so that wasn't a thing anymore.
Wow.
But they have now, and so...
so you got into the situation, then you contacted the ACLU
yeah.
of that state.
Yeah. I was involved in activism at that state, and we had ties to a lawyer that would help us a lot with protesters that needed legal things, that sort of thing.
Right.
But he was also a really big champion for the LGBTQ community there, and so I just
did they ever come out of the National Lawyers Guild or something like that, or
I do have representatives that I knew through the NLG through activism. I believe that he was through there because all of our NLG people knew who he was too. But I don't know for sure.
Okay. Well, they probably all knew each other. All doing kind of similar work.
Oh yeah, doing the same sort of justice work. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, that's great that you could actually get the ACLU to come in, because sometimes if it's not a high profile enough case, they won't take it because it's resources or something. Anyway.
Yeah, no, he did it. He did it pro bono too.
Great.
He's just a really big champion in that city, and I'm glad that he saw that injustice and took it on. So it was great.
Well, you did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the state was coming in and kind of punishing you.
Right.
For being poor and having a different kind of structure to
and
your life.
then never telling me
Yeah.
until there was no other excuse. There was a pandemic.
Right.
And for every other reason we should be getting insurance and stuff.
I'm really mad actually that they would deny you benefits during a pandemic. Because a lot of things were shutting down. How can you even get by?
And in that state, we actually had a pretty progressive governor that allowed for single parents to be able to stay home and get that that income that they had. And so I was actually able to leave for a year and be able to take care of my child and keep us safe, because there's no way that I could have kept us quarantined and also been able to be the only person making money. So
there's no childcare centers and
exactly.
Right.
So I was really fortunate to have that all set up, and then we find that one thing and we're like, well, this has always been a problem, but now I see why, and this makes no sense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What was your experience during the kind of the height of the pandemic? I mean, we're still in COVID, but
Yeah. So which we got together in August 2021.
Okay.
So throughout 2020.
Did you come in again?
Yes. Throughout 2020, we were just friends. But we lived in different states. I was actually with he's my ex now, but we're still very good friends. At the time is what I was doing for most of 2020. And he was immunocompromised. And so we were just very much stuck in the apartment.
Oh, yeah.
But it was fine. He's a gamer. We played a lot of video games.
Okay. A lot of online life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But then what really made everything move was I had an RV, right?
What's
that? What is RV? Recreational vehicle?
Oh, okay.
The camper van.
A camper van.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a camper van I named it Polly Pocket. And I wanted to live in it. It was my big purchase when I got divorced.
Were you also in another state?
Yeah.
Okay, so you both moved here.
We met in the same state.
We're from the same state.
I was in a different state when we got back together.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So why did you two move here then?
I needed to get out of the state that I was in.
Okay.
It's where I grew up.
Is it a red state or
No, it's really not.
Okay.
But it's.
Can we say what state, or do you really?
I don't need to.
Okay.
But it's a Midwestern state, and
Okay.
I can't deal with Midwestern nice. I am autistic. I can't deal with people who say one thing and mean something totally different.
Yeah.
And that's been my experience.
A lot of passive aggression.
Exactly.
In, Minnesota nice or
exactly.
Midwestern nice. Yeah.
And one of my childhood best friends moved out here almost 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And we had been talking a lot more over the pandemic, she's also immunocompromised. So we spent a lot of time online watching TV from like 1,500 miles away.
Okay.
Together. So she had me come
like
up,
commenting on as you're watching it?
Pressing start at the same time and chat and watching it together.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
It's so much fun. We live like 5 miles away. We still do it almost every night.
Okay.
But she had me come and visit in 2021 when it wasn't quite as bad with COVID, but the planes tickets were still like $50.
Sure.
So I came and visited, and the second I was here, I was like, oh, the vibes are different.
Yeah.
I'm an artist, and the city has a huge art budget, and the community like encourages and supports the artists, and so just getting to see all the public art around here, and just the way that like people seem to like process things and the way the community like thinks as a whole made sense to my brain a lot more than anywhere in the Midwest had.
Okay. So when you say that the city has a lot of money to put towards arts, do they fund individual artists or do they fund like groups?
Both.
Okay. Is this public art or is this public art?
Yeah.
Okay. Like what kind of stuff? Murals and
a lot of murals. We had applied for a project that they were doing where they're putting murals at the bus stations along the main street here.
Sure.
And so a lot of murals. A lot of the businesses. There's a lot of state funded art. But even the businesses around here will pay an artist to paint like they've got a big wall, and it's not like, hey, we want you to paint like our logo or something to do with like us. We're like, hey, we really like you as an artist. We want you to like take the space and make it pretty.
Yeah.
And that's really cool to me. Like they sort of take the capitalism out of it and they're just like, we just like your art and we want you to make our building pretty.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And you're an artist?
Yes.
And are you an artist as well?
Not technically. I wouldn't say I'm an artist.
Okay. But you support an artist.
Yeah. I love art. I'm an artistic person. And I mean I can go on and on. So I own my own business actually, called Queer Spectrum Life Coaching.
Okay.
I coach queer, neurodivergent, and invisibly ill individuals or invisible disability.
Okay.
There's a giant overlap there.
Yes. I'm just learning about all this stuff, by the way.
Yeah.
Neurodivergence.
Yeah, neurodivergence. And I think that working with people and building relationships and building community, all of that is in art in and of itself. And I very much, one of the things I like to say to Jessie is that they're my favorite artist and my favorite piece of art.
Okay.
Because I think people are art.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think I'm probably a piece of art in that way.
You know, I actually had kind of a mentor from KPFT in Houston, Texas. He was a DJ. His name was the Cheshire Nihilist, and his girlfriend Treva at the time, which I remember because she said it rhymes with tree bud. She gave me some advice one time. I was just kind of this street kid in Houston, Texas. You know, I lived in halfway houses and stuff, and she said, "Yeah, make your life art." You know, that's basically what her message was too. And I don't know if I've done that, but I've definitely been anarchistic.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. I've definitely done other things. Yeah.
Yeah.
That must be really difficult. You must be, you're kind of new to this area. To be a coach, especially with these kinds of communities, you really have to embed yourself within those communities and build a lot of trust.
So I would think I mainly coach online.
Okay.
I started my business in September 2020.
Okay.
Right. Actually,
So you're not geographically limited. Okay.
No.
All right.
And okay. I coach. I've even coached people who are in. I have somebody in like Europe area right now.
Australia?
Yeah, I was coaching someone from Australia for a bit. I have multiple Canadian, actually.
Okay.
Too.
Is that what your computer, the multiple screens are about?
No, that's the call center job.
Okay.
My tiny little laptop is what I do my coaching from.
Okay, all right.
But like, to loop way back around, I was trying to be in my RV.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Yeah, and...
Because you were thinking about moving here or just moving into the
No,
RV?
I wanted to be a nomad.
Okay.
I wanted to drive around the country and just do whatever. And a big part of getting the freedom in that is financial freedom. And I wanted to get my coaching business up and running to the extent that it could give me enough money to do that.
You would be known as a remote worker, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so that was part of all of that. And I was working in occupational therapy.
Oh, okay.
And I have a master's in occupational therapy.
Wow.
Right? Wow. I wasn't diagnosed yet with ADHD or anything, and I somehow got a master's. That was kind of traumatic.
Believe me, I understand. I got a master's degree too, and I was drinking every night and depressed. So, yeah.
No, I was. So
I just have
depressed.
the debt. I don't even have the degree. I dropped out.
Yeah.
Well, good for you. I've dropped out of so many programs.
Oh, sometimes quitting is the best choice.
Yeah. It's interesting that you went from a licensed profession with a master's degree to one that is not licensed,
not regulated.
Not regulated, and is more kind of woo a little bit. There's a lot of woo in there, a lot of people put a lot of things into coaching. Like it can encompass a lot of things, and a lot of that is really cool. And the licensed professions don't include that stuff, even though people want that sort of inclusion into those professions.
I was getting burnt out so quickly. So I graduated with my master's in 2016. Okay. Right? And by the time 2020 rolled around, I was sick of it. It is not our healthcare system is not okay.
Yeah.
Right? And we can talk about and we should talk about how awful our healthcare system is for patients. It is not good for workers either.
Yeah, right.
They keep racking productivity up further and further, and you have to write even more notes with even less time, and they expect you to carry your little tablet or computer around everywhere. They want you to write the notes while you're with the patient, which again isn't that word ethical. Doesn't feel ethical to me at all.
Yeah, it's weird because when you're in graduate school and you're trying to take notes or something, there's this balance between listening and typing, and those are two very different things. Yeah.
So now imagine you're supposed to be trying to actually be engaging in a therapeutic tool with a person. And with occupational therapy, that's very hands-on, right? And you have to do notes at the same time. They're expecting you to do notes. It's wrong.
Right. And you have to deal with somebody's body language and how they're moving. And,
I so when I first then moved to, I'm fine with saying I was in Indiana, right? And I was in Indiana for a while, and I, when I first moved there, just decided to do travel therapy.
Okay.
But it wasn't travel therapy in the typical sense, which usually you get 3-month-long contracts at one place.
Yeah.
I found a company.
People come up to Alaska and do that too.
Yeah.
You get a lot of travel nurses and
which is actually you can make a lot of money that way. But
especially in Alaska.
Yeah. They actually in Hawaii is really good for that. I have so many friends who've gone to Hawaii. Yeah. But I was with a company that basically did I was calling it substitute teaching but therapy. Okay. So I would be in different places for a week. Or even a day. I would go to places for a day, and I was actually really good at it.
Just for that short of period of time. Okay.
Because I'm really good at, with my ADHD, flying by the seat of my pants.
Okay.
And then you go to these places for a day, they don't expect you to know anything. So you just have to be very outgoing and gregarious and be good at people, which I am.
Sure.
And then do what you can because you're a substitute teacher for therapy. And I got to be in so many different, places. I was in hospitals. I was in skilled nursing facilities. I was in a school one time.
So you have to be really versatile. It sounds like.
Yeah. Whereas usually you just find one thing and lock in. But I got to dabble everywhere. And in doing that, I was like, I don't want to do this anywhere.
Does that have to do with your being neurodivergent? Like you're being able to be so versatile and not wanting to do just one thing?
Yes.
Okay.
I would say so.
Yeah.
What the fun thing about neurodivergent is every single person is neurodivergent differently.
Yeah.
It's very similar to queer.
Yeah.
in that way.
Right.
Right. But yeah, for me, I was taking the same skills and applying it in an entirely different locale. And it kept it okay for me, and it gave me enough anxiety that I could focus well enough to...
It sounds like a challenge.
It is.
Yeah.
And I did get really burnt out.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic hit, and there was no work for me, especially because I was doing it as a travel person, right? They were locking down very much to just people who were internal. And so there was nothing there for me.
Okay.
And I was like, you know what? I don't want to go back. The idea of going back made me even way more anxious. So that's why I was like, I really like coaching. And I had done ADHD coaching for myself with a group coach. And I loved it. And I actually then volunteered for that person for a bit and really honed in skills, and was doing that again just to have something to do during the pandemic.
So does coaching kind of have I come from Buddhism, and we talk about lineages and that sort of thing, so, and mentors and teachers and that sort of thing. So does coaching sort of have these lineages, like how would I describe it? Like philosophies, like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say so.
So did you seek somebody out who was like, you're doing the kind of work I want to do? And
so I fell into ADHD coaching because, let's go back again. In 2018, my marriage was falling apart. I got married right when I graduated in 2016 to my high school sweetheart.
Okay.
And we were polyamorous, which is how we also dated, right? But it wasn't working. And I was convinced it was my fault, and it was because I didn't know how to deal with my ADHD, which I then just had gotten diagnosed with.
Yeah.
And so I found a coach who I then did that coaching group. And within that 3 months of coaching in this coaching group, it made me realize that no, it's not my fault, and that my now ex-husband sucks. And I got divorced because of that coaching group. And I like
So it empowered you.
It did. And I had a period in February 2018, actually, where I was hospitalized. I self-admitted for suicidal ideation, right? And
Well, good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was like my rock bottom. And then I found that coach and got into the coaching in April 2018. And I like to say...
Why didn't you go towards psychology and psychiatry
instead? Did.
Oh, you did?
I did it all.
Okay.
I was trying to fix it.
Okay.
There was nothing to fix, by the way. It's about self-acceptance and self-love.
Maybe some coping skills, too.
Oh, well, definitely.
Yeah,
But like, you don't fix it. I don't like the word fix.
Sure.
Anyway, yeah, so then I did the coaching, and what I like to say to people and what I like to talk about is that therapy and the hospital, it saved my life. Coaching made my life worth living.
Okay.
Right?
So you flourished.
Yeah.
More. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's what I'm finding when people are talking about coaching versus like you, the master's degree that they got in psychology or some sort of therapy, marriage and family therapist or something.
That's what I was in.
Yeah, or LPC or something like that. It's the ones that are like, okay, I have this degree, but I want to incorporate tarot and whatever spirituality or neurodivergence or coping skills or harm reduction even is in there too. It's the ones that talk about that I'm like, I think I trust you more.
Yeah. No, that's what I was doing. I was in marriage and family therapy because there wasn't enough family and relationship therapists that were mindful of non-monogamy.
Yeah.
And there was no resource for polyamorous people who are, regardless, our lives are complicated, like, especially if you're not monogamous. So,
sure. And then put, queer and trans.
Exactly.
Etc.
You don't want to spend your entire counseling session having to explain your dynamic to the counselor.
Right.
Like,
defend it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's such a waste of time. It's harder to find someone that's going to actually be a good resource. So that was my idea behind it, was I wanted to do that so that I could apply being a non-monogamous person towards it. And it didn't happen.
It didn't happen. Okay.
But no, there isn't enough. What I really, really love about coaching instead of being a therapist is that I get to actually use everything I know.
Yeah, right.
Right? And I don't have to worry about these silly little rules, right? Or that are there to protect people, and I understand why they're there, but it really, really prevents connection and healing when you have so many layers in the way, right?
Yeah.
And
you're talking about the structure of it, like having to take really dense notes while you're trying to, learn about somebody.
No, I just use a little notebook and I handwrite all my notes.
Yeah. I noticed that as well. Like I've been getting some really great healthcare here in Colorado, which thank you very much, Colorado. You have some great healthcare here. I definitely needed it. After the session though, there's always a little, pop-up. Oh, here are the notes from the session. And I'm surprised at how thorough the notes are. I've had very little healthcare in my life. So when I had healthcare before, that definitely did not happen. I'm glad that they take notes, but I'm surprised, I guess, at
it's too much.
Yeah, at how detailed it is.
And they have to be. That's literally if they get.
And another thing too. Sorry.
No.
There's also this thing, and this is after every session. They also send me like a survey. How did you feel about your? I feel great because I was able to see a doctor and she was nice, but it's every single time. Why does it need to be every single time? I don't understand it. It's like it's too much.
Right,
too
exactly.
Much.
And it's because you can get here's my word finding.
Okay.
My meds have been way worn off.
Well, we could take a break for a second.
No, what's the word? The legal word when they make you turn in all your stuff and they go over it, the government.
Audited?
Audited, thank you. They audit you and you have to have all that stuff.
Who exactly audits you?
The regulatory bodies.
For the state?
Yeah.
Okay.
For the state, sometimes
is that also
it's the
insurance?
Country. Or insurance will do that too.
Okay. So insurance, state, and federal.
Yeah.
Like
all of them.
Or the licensing committee or whatever.
All of them separately.
Okay, great.
Can do that. Yeah, and they all have little different things, and you have to make sure you do it right for all of them.
Okay. Wow.
And it's not great.
That sounds terrible.
No, it's awful. I'm so glad not to be doing that.
Yeah.
But yeah. And for a while coaching was fine in sustaining me, but moving from Indiana to Colorado is a major change financially, and that is why I also work at a call center.
Right.
So
yeah, it's a very expensive here. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's worth it, but of course everybody's different.
Yeah, and a lot of queer and trans people are moving here because the laws aren't so good in other states. In fact, they're getting worse and worse by the day.
That's one of the major reasons we moved here.
Yeah, yeah.
But even still, it's not perfect. I'm a product of burnout from another broken system, the education system. I went into teaching for the last decade. and just burnt out of that within this last school year. I was hired to come out here from the state that I was in because they wanted trans representation. They wanted to they really wanted to perform as progressive here. But halfway through the school year, I started getting threats from parents, and they essentially told me there was nothing that they could do.
Threats from parents?
Yeah, and like
religious parents
and people who, because I'm non-binary, I would use MX as my signifier instead of Mr. Mister, and Mix, my last name, was fine with everyone, and then there was a group of parents that all knew each other that told their kids not to do that anymore, and
so they're kind of ganging up on you and bullying you.
And
as the teacher.
And I was in conferences from everyone from my principal to the CEO of the charter school in the state, and the lawyer for this charter family, and they just said there's nothing that we can do, and I was like, well, then we should maybe write it, because there's 350 laws right now that are targeting trans people. More than half of them are targeting trans kids and educators.
Yeah, and you were recruited for those identities.
And that year when our charter was up for renewal, they asked me to come speak at the school board as a trans teacher and a trans parent of a trans child that was also at that school, because Ace was at that school with us.
Wow.
And so, it was great.
So they didn't back you up?
No, yeah, it was great when I was getting their money for them for the next 2 years, but that happened literally 3 weeks later with the parents, and then they were just like, there's nothing.
So you sort of legitimized them so they could get some money, and then they didn't back you up. Wow.
Yeah.
And
that's terrible.
And not only that they wouldn't back me up, they wouldn't even listen to... that's fine. I understand that there's no precedent here, but if you're progressive, that means we need to make one. And
yes.
I'm happy to go on board to help you with that, because it's important. It's important to have educators that queer kids feel like represent them and feel safe around. And they were just like, well, we're thinking about making an advisory board, and then they never did. And so...
Yeah, advisory boards give recommendations, but there's no, power there.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, essentially, nothing happened, and I had spectacular burnout. Like, with what Jade was saying with the hoops that you have to jump through, it's the same with education.
Right.
The number of hats that they make you wear.
Right.
The number of risks and dangers. I've worked at a school district that's been hit with violence.
Yeah, I tried to teach... remedial math, like summer school math, to kids who were about to graduate and in danger of not graduating. And there was so much violence at that school that they expected me to break up fights, and I'm 5'2".
Yep.
I was like,
and I started in special education, essentially at a school where it was a district-wide school that was essentially just for people whose schools wouldn't deal with the behaviors of these child.
Right.
And so everyone in our school
was it designated as special ed?
It was.
Okay.
It was designated as an autism only school, but there were some of our kids who definitely were not autistic, but they just got a doctor to sign off because their schools wouldn't deal with them.
Okay.
And that was where I cut my teeth in education, was being CPI certified and being in physical danger pretty much every single day.
Wow.
I learned a lot.
Yeah.
But
yeah, those schools just don't have enough resources.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
But even then, you could see the work that you were doing. You could see that you were making a difference. By the time I burnt out and quit, I didn't feel like I was. I just felt like they're just bleeding me dry.
Yeah.
This is just making me sick. It's just killing me.
Yeah, and there's such a high turnover in these professions to begin with. Yeah.
You would think that at some point they would actually want to retain people.
Yeah.
It takes a special person to be involved in medicine. I worked in medicine too, both with animals and in an abortion clinic. So I also know what that's like.
Yeah.
But yeah, these systems have been designed to be bullshit for so long, but we're now just seeing this is the aftermath. This is what happens when you break people to the bone, make them jump through hoops,
Yeah.
give them nothing but bureaucracy, but then pretend that you're doing something for the community and for humankind.
It looks good on paper.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It all looks good on paper. It looks great for the politics and the lobbyists. But when it comes down to the people who are actually in the classroom, who are actually working with patients, it's a totally different world because it's run by people who spend zero time in it.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Let's take a break for a second.
Sure.
Actually, he was licking my hand because
he was licking mine too.
He needs to go out.
Oh,
That's right.
let's go, Coops. Come on, Cooper, let's go outside.
Yeah, he's very good at letting people know.
Come on, buddy. He's so sweet. He's such a sweet dog.